Welcome to the Diversity Pivot Podcast. I'm your host, Julie Kratz, and this season we will be unpacking real trends, hot topics in the workplace around allyship and inclusion. Our goal is that each week you leave with tangible tools, information, practical strategies that you can take back to allies at your organization. Let's dig in to this week's topic. Welcome, listeners. We have a guest this week, Yasmina Passeri, a distinguished senior project manager in the tech industry with over 12 years of experience, standing in testament to resilience, passion, and relentless commitment to fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion within the dynamic realm of technology. Her journey, marked by cultural richness and dedication to breaking barriers, has made her a beacon for change and empowerment. She's a public speaker, a corporate prowess, and many awards as well. And I'm just so excited for you to meet her. Yasmina, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Julie. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very, very happy to be with you today and with all your audience.
Yeah. Well, I know you come at this work from multiple different perspectives. Being in overseas, so largely working with European leadership teams on DEI is a really interesting perspective, as well as in the technology sector, which we know, like most industries, struggles with diverse talent. So I'd love for you just to start us off with like, how did you find your way into the DEI space?
Yes, sure. So I think, I can even add another thing to what you just said. So yes, it's tech industry and also the fact that I lived in other countries, but I'm also French. And so I was born in Paris, was raised in Paris, but then I lived 4 years in Italy, and then now I'm living in London. So I can really bring this multi-dimensional view about DEI and what I've encountered in my professional and personal career, I would say. So to answer your question about diversity, equity, inclusion, um, what I've met in the tech industry, which is mainly, I don't like to say dominated, but it's mainly populated by men. And indeed, I work, I think, 90% of the time with men. And if I add the ethnic statistic, because I'm also from Cameroon and Martinique, I can say that I can reduce the percentage of Black people I can work with. So it's a reality. And therefore, sometimes I met some challenges. It is very difficult because there are a lot of unconscious bias. So maybe we're going to talk about it later, but it's a lot of challenges that you can face on a daily basis at work that you actually even don't want to. I mean, it's not something it's something that you trigger, but it's not. I didn't choose to be Black. I didn't choose, to be a woman. It's just nature. So you already arrive with different barriers, and I'm sure that different people can recognize themselves in this. So therefore, in a daily basis at work, especially in the consulting industry, so I'm working with clients. Different clients have more or less sensitivity to the DEI, so diversity, equity, inclusions topic initiatives. So yes, it's very challenging actually. There's a lot of things that I can talk about, to be honest.
Yeah, like you said, I didn't choose my identities, right? None of us really do. None of our identities, even if it seems like it's a choice, is rarely a choice. It's who we are. It's our identity. It's something that's critical to us being seen and being heard and feeling a sense of belonging. Yasmin, I'm curious, knowing, I know you do, have some global exposure and, you can see over the pond here in the United States where the DEI conversation is a bit more fraught. In Europe, I feel like the tone is a little stronger. It's a little less wavering. It's not as mixed up in the political news cycle. Tell us from a European perspective, where do you see DEI? And then maybe dial it up globally. What are you seeing right now?
So it's a good question actually. I would say, so I would take it in different layers. From the more open to DEI, to diversity, equity, inclusion, to the less open in a European, from based on my own experience, right? So definitely the most open country about diversity, equity, inclusion, ready to challenge its own way of thinking, I would say number one is the UK. So in London, I would say London because I can only talk about London. The second will be Paris. The last one will be Milan or Sardinia, where I live, where I live. Like it's really like this. So the more you go down, the less people are open. And in France, for instance, we know that there are diversity, equity, inclusions, challenges, sometimes issues, but it's hidden. It's almost a shame to talk about it because it can create a lot of let's say conflicts. But in the UK, we know that there is the DEI. It's a fact, right? And people are ready and more open to change things. In Italy, it's just closed, just doesn't exist. It's like I remember how many times I had to speak with Italian explaining that yes, in 2023, 2024, 2022, you still have, as a Black person, you still encounter different challenges. And I had to struggle explain them, right? Really, I'm not joking. So, well, what's okay? Well, it's totally different. So from an European point of view, if I take now from this experience and take um, another view, I would say in general, I find Europe in general, I would say less open to diversity, equity, inclusions topic than if I take, for instance, um, the US, the United States. It's totally different. So yes, I mean that's my view. And I think it's maybe also based on the history. So in the United States, you have a lot of, I mean, American. I remember I worked with the American, and I remember he was a black person, and I said, "Well, where are you coming from? I'm American." Yeah, but where are you coming? Where are the roots, the origin? He didn't know because you're American,
No,
right? That's
no,
the thing.
that's so
You're
sad.
American. But in France, I'm always saying, yeah, I'm French. Yeah, but where are you coming from? Ah, okay, I'm from Martinique and Cameroon, you see? So naturally, you have a more open-minded and a more narrow-minded, and more because you're more accepted as you're American, black, or whatever, black, white, you're American, right? In France or in Italy, you are your origin first.
Yeah, it isn't. You're right. It's so tied to our racial past and colonization, and of course, slavery here, and people not even knowing their origins a lot of times. Just the sad reality of where we are. But it is interesting how you say you go from north to south and things change, which is so interesting because from a racial perspective, the more southern you go, the more closer you get to people of color. And it's just a fascinating dynamic. The same is true in the United States. The southern states, tend to be where slavery was and where Black people were forced to be, right? And so unless they've migrated, it's less likely to be in the north or in cities too. Just so interesting, Yasmina. Yeah. So I wonder, with the work you do in corporate to support DEI, and one of the things I notice about having worked with your organization is the intense focus on leadership and really wanting leadership to get engaged in the conversation around DEI. Tell me more about that. Like, how do we get these senior level executives that are, always have a lot vying for their time, a lot of priorities? How do we get them to continually focus on DEI?
Ah, my gosh, it's one of my um, continuous thinking about, okay, how do I bring more attention DI to the senior leadership team? What I've definitely seen so far that bring a lot of good results is speak their own language. So it means if you go more on you put too much emotion. Okay, DEI is very important because people will feel more included, etc., etc. It's important for them, but it doesn't trigger something in their mind. Doesn't just because they are on figures, they are on yeah, the numbers, the budget, the cost, etc. So the way of if you approach it like this, I didn't see a lot of positive results. However, if you explain them, actually, if you don't do this, you may have, for instance, fine. So if you are a less diverse workforce, or the diverse people you have in your company feel that they don't feel comfortable, first of all, you pay them very expensively, and then they're going to leave to another company. So you're going to invest on them, and actually you invest for nothing because they're going to take your knowledge, the money, and they're going to use it to another company. So if you say that, oh, you start to grab their attention. Then if you're saying, actually, there are companies that paid huge amount of fine because there are employees that felt discriminated, and this is something that can happen as well if we don't do that. So it's not do DEI because you need to have more diverse workforce because it's good. It's more about if you don't do it, that's what can happen. So it's another way of talking about addressing the same topic from another perspective. And as well, what I've seen is take very factual business as usual examples. So for instance, in my case, as a senior project manager in projects, I've faced some difficult challenges with clients where in meetings for several times I had someone that was not talking the same way when he was speaking with a woman or a man, but not one time. I'm talking about a few months like this, and it was difficult to raise it, to being listened, being heard. So, well, long story short, after that, it had to be escalated, and this is something that goes to the senior leadership, and then it brings issues. So therefore, they say, okay, well, maybe we need to understand this DEI because even on client side, it can bring issues, and therefore they are forced to do that. So before going into at such level of escalation, is also explaining a daily basis. Look, this person told me that doesn't feel comfortable. Actually, it goes to HR, or HR also sharing the what they've heard from the collaborators for the employees and speak to the senior leadership team, and therefore it triggers as well something in their mind. So it's just different perspective. It's to tackle the topic from different angles to get the results, the outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the way you articulated that. What I often find, especially with senior leaders that have grown up in the ranks of an organization and tend to be, let's be honest, more from the dominant group, they're like, this stuff doesn't happen. This has never happened to me. I don't know what a microaggression is. And it's like they're being honest. Like they haven't
It's
experienced it and they haven't even probably noticed it happening around them. And so they're completely confounded by like, why do we have to do things so differently? It worked fine for me. Why doesn't it work for you? I don't get it. You must be doing something wrong. Now, of course, I'm being facetious here, but there's a disconnect in lived experience. And like you said, it's about pointing things out and helping them notice and helping them see non-inclusive behavior and how their role in interrupting that and modeling inclusion is important. And the cost of exclusive or non-inclusive environments, right? The turnover cost, the training, like you said, the sunk cost of investing that in somebody that's going to walk out the door, maybe to your competitor too. The other thing that I think helps you in Europe that, well, the US will be forced to do this at some point, but we don't like to be told what to do. We're a very rebellious culture.
Yeah.
that you all have a real big focus on ESG, environmental, social governance. And within that, there's metrics and parameters and expectations on things like gender leadership ratios, pay equity. And I know it's a little bit leaning on the gender side, but Yasmin, I'm just curious from your vantage point, these high level goals that the European Union is setting, and anybody that does significant business with Europe has to adhere to, US companies beware. Um, I'm just curious, how much do you think that kind of legal risk, compliance risk speaks to senior leaders?
I speaks very well to them because behind legal and compliance issues, there are finance behind this. It's always the same because the senior lead, I mean, business, unless you're a charity, you're here to make profit and money because then you have the stakeholders as well, the shareholders, sorry, as well, and stakeholders as well to maintain. So, well, if you give if you show legal or compliance obligation that the companies need to stick, otherwise they need to stick to, otherwise they're gonna be penalized by this. Therefore, it becomes important, and it goes in the senior leadership agenda. And for instance, all the CSR, so all the corporate responsibilities topic is starting to be, it's not starting, it is more compliance now. It's like it's mandatory for companies to really invest in CSR. And there are a lot of companies that do it because it's mandatory, not because they truly think about it. They think it's useful. It's because it's mandatory. It's legal or compliance. You're obliged to do it. Therefore, they do it not because they feel and truly believe they should do it, but just because it's just tick the box. And in France, for instance, you can't have statistics on gender, ethnicity. It's forbidden. People, you can't do that. In the UK, you can. In France, you can't have statistics on how many Black people, how many foreigners you're going to have in your company, how many Hispanic, African. You can't have this in France. So if it starts to become mandatory for companies in France, it's going to be very difficult, and we may have some strikes because people are going to say, "Well, no, it's do it for racism and blah blah blah." But it's just,
Oh, the French love their strikes. I remember from
I
my
know,
my
right? So
life
that's
there.
why
Not that
I
against the
can bring my
French, but they
experience.
don't take it. They're going to speak up. They're going to use their voice. Yeah. So, and that's a good point because Europe's kind of like our states, the countries, are so different. Like what resonates in Alabama does not resonate in California. And similarly with different cultures and country, backgrounds and legislation. So interesting. Yeah, Yasmin, I wonder, just having done DEI work for quite some time, what is a wish that you have of the work we get to do? It's a trying work. It's not easy work. It is a privilege, though, that we get to do things that have such a good, hopefully, social impact when they let us do the work. What is one wish you might have for the future of DEI?
I have different wishes. So I need to choose the right one. Mm, I would say awareness about unconscious bias, and from unconscious bias becomes conscious bias. For me, if we have that in mind and really people accept it and put it in consciousness, then for me we're going to do a big step, because it's, as you said earlier, when you have the leadership and you senior leadership people and you explain them, they say, no, but I don't do that, I didn't know. That is also related to the experience of the person. If you've been privileged or never faced being different, then it's normal, and it's very true. They really feel it. They're saying what they really think. So if we can open and in the future make this unconscious bias conscious and not being and not fight to make people understand that it exists. So it's a fact. Now it's what do we do to make it less impactful? Let's try to find actions to go against it, not go against it, but to reduce the bias, the conscious bias. Then for me, it would be a great step.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. To be consciously aware of what you're
Yes,
doing that may not be helpful on a daily basis.
exactly. Yes.
And I wish too people weren't so darn afraid of getting it wrong. Like, you're gonna screw up. You will. I screw up. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. There's a reason you fall off the bike the first few times you learn to ride it. It doesn't just naturally happen. I wish
Exactly.
we'd quit expecting such perfection from people that are trying and give them some grace too and hold them accountable. But it is important that we're conscious of our biases and, it's just people just being curious about lived experiences that they themselves have not had. Really, it feels so simple, but it feels so out of reach all at the same time, Yasmina. Well,
Yes, it's true.
thank you so much for the work you do. I'd love for our listeners to know, where's a good spot? Where do you hang out on social media? Or where's a good spot for them to connect with you?
LinkedIn, definitely. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm publishing articles about DEI 2 times, sometimes 3 times a week, depending on my inspiration in the work I have to do. So I really like to raise awareness about, on DEI and
Mhm.
share my experience, what I've challenged, all the challenges that I've faced, am still facing, and will face as well, to also open bit more people's mind and make unconscious conscious.
I love
So
that.
yes,
Making the
LinkedIn.
unconscious conscious. What a good tagline, Yasmina. I appreciate you doing this and sharing your work. It's so important. I'm so thankful for you.
Oh, thank you so much, Julie. Thank you. I mean, it's thanks to you and your podcast. It's the also way to make conscious unconscious conscious, because I'm sure that even I would always think that if it's only one person that is listening to this podcast and saying, well, okay, that's interesting. Let's think about it. Let's think about how I work, how I behave at work, what I think. If it's only one person, we won already, because it's small step, but it's big step. So even if it's just one person that is listening to us now and like this podcast, please just think about your on reflection. What is the way that you're approaching life and approaching your work environment and people that
Mhm.
are different from you? It doesn't it is can be gender, it can be disability, it can be different things. But I'm going to take a very simple example that I sometimes often do, I would say, is when I took the underground or the Paris metro in France. I look at how in the train or metro, how it is, mm, how it has been built, which means if you see the seats in the UK, the seats are it's very strict seats. So it means that if you are oversized, you can't have a seat. You can't. You just need to stand, because it doesn't. It's made in a way that actually unconsciously you don't accept diversity, but it's unconscious, right? So something that has been built
Mhm.
years and years and years. So if you as a listener and just look at these small things about how the your environment is made, and do you think it is inclusive to everyone? If you do that in your environment, in your everyday life, but then you do the same at work, just notice it. Just notice is the first step. And if you want, then you think, oh well, I noticed that, what can I do? Maybe I can speak to someone else. And it's great. You can't change the seat of a metro, but you can talk about it to someone. They're going to talk to someone and to someone. So one person of this podcast is inspired, then Julie, I think we won the day.
Yeah. You never know the domino effect of noticing something, having a conversation, pointing it out. You just have no idea what someone's going to do with that information. It spreads.
Exactly, exactly. Oh, it's great. It's very great. Really, it's great to speak with you and really tackle those different topics.
Ditto. Ditto. Thank you for your time today, Yasmina.
Oh, thank you, Julie. Thank you for
Thank you for listening to the Diversity Pivot podcast. My hope is that you walked away with a tangible tool, insight, or information that you can share with other allies on the journey. If you liked this week's episode, please leave us a review. Your feedback means a tremendous amount to us. We'll be back next week with another hot topic.
the time as well.